Hello and welcome to Spooning with me, Mark Wogan. As ever, we find ourselves here in the Mount Street restaurant where Jamie Shears, our executive chef, has been cooking up a storm for my very, very special guest, where we will challenge the food that she says she loves and the food that she says she hates. Today's guest, she is nothing short of, well, I must apologise to Claudia Winkleman, but she is the queen of the fringe. Now, her husband, he started out in IT, and then luckily she discovered writing, presenting, and documentary making. It is with great pleasure that I welcome Dawn O'Porter.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And we're here to take you through a little food journey today.
Can't wait.
And obviously talk about your fantastic new book, which I have read. Now, I think it would be fair to say that it's not necessarily aimed at a middle-aged man like myself, but I really enjoyed it.
Oh, good! I'm pleased.
I really enjoyed it, and it's kind of I just sort of flew through it in a sense. It was like it's a lovely read, and it's a lovely sort of journey with these two characters. Mm-hmm. Do you want to tell us a bit about the characters,
sure.
or shall I?
Well, we can do a bit of both,
yeah,
maybe.
Exactly.
You can jump in if I'm not doing a good job.
Yeah.
So the two characters are called Renee and Flo.
Yeah.
And in this book, they're 22, and they live on the island of Guernsey, which is where I grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And this is actually, although it stands alone as its own book, there are two books that precede it, where I started writing about these girls when they were 15.
Is it a trilogy?
Does
it sit as a trilogy?
It absolutely does. However, you don't have to have read the other books to come in straight at Honeybee. You really don't. And I wrote it specifically as an entry point for Renee and Flo. As with anything, if characters already exist, it's lovely to see what they've been up to before, but I also think that you could very easily read this and go back to the others. I've kind of put the backstory in here enough where you won't be left in the dark at all. But so I love these girls so much. When I first started writing fiction 12 years ago, Paper Airplane's the first in the series. You know, when people say they've got a book in them, that was the book that was in me that I had to write. And I got the opportunity to write it all that time ago. And now I've had the opportunity to go back to those characters again. These are the characters where I pour myself through them.
Right.
And
because it's fair to say that these are inspired by your own life.
Yes.
They're not you.
No. Very important if my dad is listening. I didn't do that.
Well, because, let's face it, there's some of the stuff that they get up to you wouldn't want to tell your parents.
No. This is the wonderful thing about writing fiction. It's all made
fiction.
up.
Yeah.
Renee is undoubtedly inspired by me. So we both have a very similar family history. We both lost our mums when we were young, have one sister, lived with our grandparents after our mums died, and then ended up living with an auntie. In my case,
Guernsey.
In Guernsey, in my case, an auntie and uncle. She is where Renee is my therapy. Renee is where I vent, and it's very cathartic for me to write her. I iron out all my creases, and that's why I'm so stable and so solid now with no issues.
Because of
all
Renee. And if you read about Renee, there obviously has been quite a lot to process.
It's a lot to process. She's been through an awful lot. Now, these two girls bonded over grief. So Renee lost her mother when she was very small, and when they were teenagers, Flo lost her dad.
Yeah.
Now, they were in the same class at school and should not have been friends. They're so different.
Now, is there any of Flo in you?
I think Flo is a mashup of a bit of me, a bit of a lot of people I know, and the friend I always wish I'd had.
Right.
And I think Flo is, when I was a teenager who had lost my mum, and looking around thinking everybody else had perfect lives with their families and their best friends, which obviously no one had perfect lives, but at the time I used to see it that way. I wanted a Flo so much. And I had lots of friends, and I had, best friends for periods of time. But I think now I realise it was my personality needing to move on and never being satisfied and always thinking something was waiting for me around the corner. But I think if I'd have had a Flo, a really, really, really loyal best friend.
But also, Flo is a sort of antidote, in a sense, to everything that Renee is.
When I'm writing them, very often, when I've written it, because it's written from both of their perspectives, if I've written Renee, Flo's chapter will be whatever the opposite is to what Renee is being. And yet my job as a writer is to make the reader believe in their friendship and understand why they're together.
Well, it's like, with Renee, all of her sort of nuttiness, shortcomings, perhaps, overtly free spirit side of her, she's sort of forgivable. And Flo has to continually forgive her. Is that the bit that you were missing? Is somebody who would just turn around and go, not again, but it's fine, we'll carry on.
Sort of. I definitely would have had a lot of people over the course of my life find me utterly exhausting.
I can identify with that.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I get it now. I didn't really get it at the time.
No.
Because I'd be like,
But that's
I'm
part of growing
nice
up.
and I'm fun. Why do I keep losing people? But Flo is, because Flo needs her too. Because there's very few people at that age who understand what they're going through.
Well, Flo sort of slightly reminds me of my wife, who found that rebellious bit a bit later on than anybody else.
Yeah.
We always joke in our family that, especially with my son Harry, who's 17, he's like, "I'm not listening to you, Mum. You were really square when you were my age. I don't, you don't understand." And then, sort of in her 20s, sort of spread her wings a little bit.
Oh, that sounds fun. When did you meet?
We met in our late 20s.
When she was fun.
Yes. Well, as we were sort of leaving that bit behind. But it's that thing of, I don't know, I think when you're with someone, you want, and I don't know in your relationship, but for me, it's about having someone who is definitively calmer than me.
That's not my situation.
but also just has a fantastic edge to them.
Yeah.
That can sort of just make you go, what? That bit, she still to this day will say stuff that, she said something this morning, which I can't repeat, but you just go, oh my God, you are darker than me.
Oh, I love that.
So Honeybee,
yes,
because obviously she has this, Renee in particular has this significant person in her life who's her aunt, who keeps bees.
Yeah.
And was, natural local honey, big thing.
Yeah.
I think it's really important. I'm going to get a little bit off pitch here, but, people who do that very quietly make a big difference to life, because what a lot of people don't understand about bees is if we didn't have bees, we wouldn't be here.
We would all die.
We would all die.
Yeah.
And, and I love that there's this sort of core anchor in her life that is sort of, that's a huge focus for her as well. It's a really nice kind of little circle in the book. Now, one of the first things I got for you here is something that I moved out of London about 3.5 years ago, and my love of food is ingrained by my family and all that sort of thing. But what I love about being out in the countryside is all that kind of local stuff that is available to you. So I've brought you, oh no, that's the wrong one. It's over here. I have brought you some local produce.
Oh my goodness.
Which is some Henley honey, right?
Delicious.
And some local cheeses. Because obviously Guernsey cheese features a lot in the book as well. It's their job to sort of get the awareness around Guernsey cheese out there. So but one of my favorite things, so this is
truffle honey.
Black truffle honey. But as you can see, it's not any nasty rubbish truffle oil. There's proper truffles in there.
That is beautiful.
And this is some nettlebed cheese, which is literally the creamery up the road. And if you are ever in the area, next to the creamery, they have what they call the cheese shed, where you can have the greatest cheese toasty on earth. Now, I know you are gluten-free.
I am, annoyingly.
When did that happen?
It's always been there, and I've gone through various stages of denial throughout the last 25 years because I'm such a foodie, and it's very difficult to be told you can't eat a major food group like gluten. And it's come and go over the course, kind of different levels of severity. When I was pregnant, I could mainline baguettes with no problem at all. It was such a weird thing. And then I read that pregnant women can get the enzyme back that means that you can digest gluten. So after my second baby, Valentine, was born, I was just on, gluten fest, especially in 2020. And unfortunately, the pain became so unbearable for me. I was going to have a hysterectomy. It was just all so dramatic. And then just before I was going to get booked in for that, I just said, I'm going to try the gluten-free one last time. I went home, haven't touched gluten since, and I honestly haven't had a cramp. I haven't had a single moment of pain.
Because I thought, obviously prejudging you, that you'd gone down the anti-gluten thing because of your time in LA.
No, God, no. My time in LA was so food driven. Am I going to get to eat this?
Yes, it's there. You please
Thanks.
tuck in.
I need a man to open the jar.
There we go.
Thank you so much.
This is my other favourite cheese here. This is a Délice de Bourgogne, which is light and sharp and it's fantastic. And it goes so well with that.
So how do you want me to do this? Do you want me to
I think we'll hack you a bit of that off.
All right, great.
To try.
Truffle is my love language.
Well, but proper truffle.
Proper truffle.
Yeah.
A friend of mine gave me a truffle for a birthday present. She delivered it wrapped in tissue, and I had to take care of it like it was a newborn baby. And I really did.
We want to at home now because we've got a garden finally. How good is that? How good is that cheese? And that is made
incredible.
5 minutes drive from my house. And I count myself very lucky that is available to me. Now try the...
Is this a cow or a goat? It looks quite goaty.
No, that's cow.
It's cow.
That's cow.
Delicious. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to
Just
dig in there for
another bit. Get another little bit of truffle.
That's what I want.
Because cheese and honey, it's just made to go together.
I do a cheese board every Sunday.
Yeah.
For people to nibble on before.
Now, do you like the sharpness?
That is incredible. It's so light.
Yeah. It's really, you can eat a ton of that.
Yeah, it's almost moussey.
I mean, that to me is one portion. That is for me that amount there. I could just eat that.
Do you?
Yeah, absolutely.
That is really stunning. But yeah, I do honey with the cheese every week, and people are like, oh, they got honey. It's like, trust me, it's absolutely delicious.
So you love the cheese.
This one particularly, what was it called?
Délice de Bourgogne.
I've eaten a lot of cheese. I'm a very cheesy family, living close to France on Guernsey with the Guernsey dairy also, and I've never eaten a cheese as delicious as that in my life.
It is extraordinary. It is my go-to happy cheese place.
I've now got a happy cheese.
Everybody needs a happy cheese.
So good. Everyone has to go to Henley to buy this cheese.
But I'm about to make you happier again, because regular listeners will know that before you come on, you answer a little questionnaire about your food loves and food hates. Now, what featured a lot for you was potatoes.
Oh, I love potatoes.
So being in Mayfair, we've got you some triple cooked chips here.
Oh.
Right. With jalapenos and cheesy sauce.
Oh my goodness.
How does that, I mean, we've kind of covered cheese and potatoes and everything.
What I am seeing here is what I want to see in a chip, almost translucent.
Yes.
From crispy fat with cheese on top. And this is a cheesy dip.
No, that's the kind of curry sauce that goes with it. So it's really posh curry chips.
Are they thrice cooked?
Oh, of course.
They are incredible. So crunchy, so light. And they just look absolutely perfect.
But you see, what a lot of people don't realise about potatoes is if you want to make them like that, it takes a lot of work. The thrice cooked is a commitment that many don't wish to take on. So you've got to cut them up, obviously, first. You then need to boil them. You then got to lay them all flat, put them in a fridge overnight.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah. So then what that does is kind of remove the excess moisture from the chip. You then blanch them in at about 160. Right. Take them out. If you want to be a complete pain in the bum, you then lay them out flat and put them back in the fridge again. And then you put them in very hot oil to finish them off.
It's a lot to do at home.
It is.
But if there's ever a menu with thrice cooked chips, it's one for me and one for the table.
Do you know what I do at home, which is very popular, is thrice cooked new potatoes.
What?
So what you do is you boil the new potatoes, crush them. You then put them in the fridge.
Yeah.
Let them do all the kind of drying out thing, and then you deep fry them, blanch them in the deep fryer, and then crisp them up.
Have you got an actual deep fryer, or do you do a pot boil on the stove?
No, I've got a deep fryer. But it has to live outside because Susan hates the smell of it in the house.
Yeah. And so do you change the oil often, or do you leave the same oil?
No, I change the oil quite often. Or occasionally what I will do is you just strain the oil.
Yeah.
But this, I've got a 10-litre one,
Fab.
that sits outside, but I have it's in a specific shed.
Oh, delicious. I've been doing a lot of squash potatoes lately. And my favourite thing about the internet and social media particularly are all the brilliant recipes. And squash potatoes are having a real moment. They're hot on TikTok right now.
Yeah, well, I'd like to think I started it.
You
it's
did.
Probably a lie.
And everyone references you when they make them.
Well, because you know who's brilliant with potatoes is that girl Poppy Cooks.
Oh.
Have a look at Poppy Cooks.
Oh, I will.
She is great with a potato. I mean, she's a great cook anyway.
Okay, fine.
But her potato recipes are great.
Well,
the other one I like is that guy. Have you ever seen the Monster Burrito guy?
No.
Oh.
All right, I'll find him tonight.
He's phenomenal as well.
I'm really aware of my crunching while you're talking.
Carry on. Regular listeners are used to people hearing people eat on this, so you're fine.
My kids ask me constantly, what's your favourite food? And despite the fact that I say the same answer every single time, they just think I'm going to say something else one day. Chips and mayonnaise.
Yeah. Well, I've also got down here, I've got your favourite hangover food here. So I've got you some potato salad.
Oh, yeah.
And Kettle chips.
Oh, my God.
So talk me through this.
This was an accidental head in the fridge with a terrible hangover discovery, which I'm sorry to say is quite regular. And there was a pot of potato salad and kettle chips, which I never, ever do not have kettle chips in my cupboard. And so I started to just do this with my head in the fridge, load up some mayonnaise-y potato on top of a
Sort of like a private 9.5 weeks moment.
Oh my God. Now, that to me is the perfect canapé.
Easily pleased.
And I think a lot of money could be saved. And effort.
Yeah, I'm going to try. I've never done this, so pass those over. I'm going to give this a go.
Just a little delicate scoop.
Don't overload. Is that what you're saying?
overload.
Because you don't want to reduce the crunch. You see, I don't know about you, but in my potato salad, I do like a little bit of apple.
Yeah, me too, but I like pear.
Oh,
That's a Jamie Oliver hint. I had the most brilliant situation.
Oh, that is good.
Isn't that lovely?
Doubling up the potato.
So satisfying. And if you want, you can make like a sandwich and put another little crispy on top. That's quite a mouthful.
Do you know what I had last night that was fantastic? We got home last night. Neither of us could be bothered to cook. So we had sausage sandwiches.
Oh!
We sat on the sofa.
My husband's favourite food.
We had sausage sandwiches and then cookie dough ice cream.
That's incredible.
It was great. Now, your husband, you met, was it when did you get married? 2012?
We got married in 2012.
Yeah.
We met on my 30th birthday. And he introduced himself to me on Facebook.
Did he?
Kept asking me to go bowling.
Oh, yes. No, I read this.
Yeah.
It's a weird. Is that something people do in LA? Let's go bowling.
I think back then, we didn't even have Twitter back then. Still like Facebook. Life was quite pure. And so he kept asking me on Facebook to go bowling. And I said no, because I was seeing somebody else. And also his Facebook profile picture is this kind of old lady, and it has been ever since. And I was like, who was this guy? And then I looked him up and said, God, the IT crowd, what's that? I'd never watched that. So I kept saying no. And then on my 30th birthday, I was having a party and I was really worried that no one would come. So he asked me to go bowling that day. And so I said, well, come and bring your friends. And he turned up at midnight. Everyone else had left. I was dancing with my dad. Swapped a tall Scottish man for a tall Irish man. And that was it.
This was in LA. So you were both living out in LA. He was by then doing that. He'd moved on from the IT crowd and was sort of doing the whole big Hollywood thing.
Well, he was out there
doing... For people who don't know, your husband is Chris O'Dowd.
Chris O'Dowd.
The tall, handsome Irish actor.
Very tall, very handsome, very Irish.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, it's perfect. He was out there doing meetings and things like that, and then he soon after that did Gulliver's Travels, and soon after that did Bridesmaids. So it was kind of 100 miles an hour on his career from the second we met, which was amazing. But when I got together with him just before it all really kicked off in that kind of Hollywood way, which is really nice because we got to do that together.
And did you both enjoy that, or did it become a little bit tiresome? Because you hear people talk about it as a sort of slightly vacuous existence. Was that your experience of it?
I think I didn't find it vacuous experience at all. And I think when you are in the world of comedy, people have grafted to get to where they are. You know, comedians have really had to prove themselves, especially that lot, the SNL crew that were in Bridesmaids and Christmas Dress, working with amazing people. I was having a bit of a hard time myself because my TV career had just ended. I wasn't getting any work and I felt I was struggling on my own personal...
Which was strange because you'd put together a really good body of intelligent work. It wasn't like you'd kind of done sort of frou-frou stuff and it was all kind of...
It was strange. I'd gone out to LA to make a series for Channel 4 that did well. It's called Extreme Wife, and I went and lived as, you know, different kinds of wives all over the world. And it was really, I mean, I really put my heart and soul into it. And then it just took them 10 months to tell me that they weren't going to do a second series of me living out in LA, having spent all my money and was just a bit kind of really needed this show to get picked up again. And it didn't happen, and it kind of spiraled into a few years of me really, really struggling with what I was going to do. And I was living somewhere where I didn't have a visa where I could work for anybody else. So how could I have gone from being like so successful to literally nothing? But all that while I was writing, and I had a column in a magazine, and it was that column that led to a call about a year and a half later where an editor, a fiction editor, called me and said, I love your column in that magazine. I think you'd write great fiction for young adults. I'd love to give you a 2-book fiction deal.
Wow.
And it was changed my life, saved my life, and that was Paper Airplanes and Goose, which was the first 2 series of this.
So you now focus more on being an author.
Yeah.
Have you kind of let TV go? Do you not want to do it anymore?
I've let it go, to be clear. No one's banging down my door. But I I love my life. I've carved it out. So I've got 2 kids and I'm around for them, which is wonderful. I managed to get a studio about 10 minutes walk from my house, and I go to work and I do a 9 to 5. And I've got quite a few different jobs. I do lots of charity stuff. I do the writing, I do designing, I do all these things. And as long as I get to like 9 till 3:30 at my desk every day, I get all the jobs done. And when I'm taken away from my desk, everything gets very stressful. So the idea of making TV, because the books will always be the most important thing. I see a TV job as like, that just makes writing very stressful.
But that's quite disciplined of you to sort of take that time to go and do that. But obviously the thing of appearing on a screen does help sell more of these.
It does. But I do think we're moving into a world where there's not only TV. Like, I love doing events and I love doing stage stuff and I love doing radio and all that. And it's not so essential anymore. You know, I'm on the promotion campaign this 2 weeks, so I'm going to be on TV and doing bits and bobs. But this is kind of how, when you write books, you find your readership, and it is the loveliest relationship when you are writing to a body of people who are excited for your work. And my job now is to maintain that readership and excite them and give them more of what they want. And that thrills me so much. When you're on TV, you have to appeal to everyone. Well, that's how my TV. Yeah. You know, if it was like everyone, it's all about numbers and viewing figures, and that doesn't really suit me anymore as an artist. Not sound like that, but it isn't. But I mean,
you've
what's
got
important.
kind of. I mean, without appearing too bold, you've sort of got to a stage of life. I mean, you know, maybe an opportunity you could have got to that stage, like perhaps Loose Women could be calling for you. Would you not consider a position on that particular desk?
No, I wouldn't. No, absolutely not.
No.
I've been a guest on there and had a pretty horrifying experience, so I'm not going to go on and host it. But we don't need to get into that now. The thing, I do look at TV sometimes and I think, oh, would I like to do that? Would I like to do that? And sometimes think, yeah, that would be fun. And then I actually imagine getting picked up at 6 o'clock in the morning and not getting home till 10 o'clock at night, being exhausted and not seeing my kids, and just think, I can't be bothered.
Yeah.
I love writing so much. I truly believe that I will be a more successful writer long term if I don't go back on television.
Okay. Well, I mean, what you, I don't know if it's been a conscious effort, but with the books, it's like you take a section of these 2 people's lives. So we've now sort of got to sort of mid-20s with them.
Yeah.
So there's are we going to just keep doing it in sort of 4-year sort of blocks?
Well, this was all, the Renee and Flo stories was all I ever thought I would do. And then these books got me recognised as writing fiction. And then another publisher swooped in and gave me these amazing deals to write The Cows and So Lucky and Cat Lady. And so I concentrated on those. But going back to these guys now, I realised that was always my intention, to write about them until they're old ladies and see this friendship through
No, I
their
love
lives.
the idea of
I
that.
know, so do I. And I had the great pleasure of interviewing Jacqueline Wilson a couple of weeks ago, and the entire audience was women who grew up reading her books, and now she's, an old lady, and she's just written her first book for adults. And I was so moved and excited at the prospect of 40 years from now sitting in a room with readers who have read these books, who have grown up with these characters. That gave me such a thrill. So it was more motivating than I imagined when I said I'd interview her. I was like, that's what I want to happen.
I mean, that thing, you mentioned it earlier, that everybody's got a book in them.
Yes.
Some people have books and they're not very good.
But you should still write it.
Yes, no, I'm halfway through a book that may never get finished, but I do think it is that lovely thing, and that's why I admire what you were talking about with that discipline, to actually sit down and do it. But I think that is the only way.
I've had to do that because I've got small kids, and I was spending so much time stressed around them and with my laptop at home, and that's okay when they're kind of really young and don't notice. And then they get to an age where they're like, oh, Mama, you're busy, aren't you? You're always busy. And I'm like, oh, God, I am. I'm always busy. So my promise to them these days, apart from if, there are occasions when I have to work at home,
how do your
but
kids
I just
now?
do it at work. So they are 7 and 9.
Yeah. You see, they still need you. I'm at 17. I now get looked at like, what do you want?
No, I know. Oh, I can't.
And my mother always used to say, because it is like, I mean, if I was ever, I've said this before, but if I was ever going to write a parenting book, it would be entitled "It's Shit Until They're 3."
I'd extend that.
No, and my mother always used to say, I said, guys, because no, the best years 0 to 10. Like, really? I found those awful.
Do you know what's interesting? I feel like right now, which is especially why my 9 to 5 is so important right now, and why I had to get my space to work in, because I am in this sweet spot. I am loving being with my kids at the moment. I find they're self-sufficient enough where, we can all be in the same house, and I'm not like, everything's
and you go to lose over there.
Yes, but also not everything in the house isn't a death trap for the child. And they'll go down the garden and kick a ball, and they'll help me with the dogs, and they help me with the laundry. And it's obviously all family, there's meltdowns sometimes, but it is just, I feel like, toddlers, God, I'm so glad that's over. I found that really, really difficult.
Well, it's that thing that there's no talking sense to them.
There's no talking sense to them. They're wild animals, and they trash your house and your sense of self.
Now, we've got to that point in proceedings where I am going to hand you this.
Hello.
Which is the Spooning with Mark Wogan Smug Blindfold.
I love it.
I'm going to feed you.
Oh, great.
Yeah, here we go. Open wide. Tell me what you've got there.
That is smoky.
Mm-hmm. Give me flavours, give me textures.
Is it smoked mackerel?
It is.
Is it?
Yes.
I love it.
You can take the blindfold off.
Oh, that's delicious.
Well, because you obviously growing up by the sea.
Yeah.
Food, fish, and anything
Huge
that came out of
part of
water was a huge part of Guernsey life.
Yeah.
But you had a funny moment with oysters.
Oh God, yeah. So my aunt and uncle who raised me, we used to go over to France quite a lot of the weekends because just hop over from Guernsey. And I used to, as a kid, they introduced me to oysters when I was about 11, maybe 10, 11, when I just moved in with them. And my uncle used to, shuck them in the kitchen. And I don't even know if this is, I've got a few oyster stories actually. And I remember sitting in a restaurant when I was really young in France and ordered 6 oysters for my starter and then 24 oysters for my main course. And the whole restaurant just went, what is happening with this child? Did you mean that one or the one that I'm very allergic?
Yes.
Right.
Well, because I think it's so sad because you obviously love seafood and you talk about fruits de mer being your favourite kind of thing to eat because it just, you get
hours
that.
Of picking.
Yeah, you just get there and you're just there for hours working to get the most out of it.
And so a few years ago, I had the great pleasure of opening the Southampton Boat Show, very random. And they took me to the Oyster and Champagne tent. and I just ate all the oysters, as I always do. And then I went cross-eyed, started hallucinating, and was being dragged across this car park by Nick Hancock's wife, who looked at me and went, "You've had a dodgy oyster." And there were no hotel rooms left in Southampton because they were all booked out. And each of the hotels was like on the corner of this big car park. She was just dragging me from each one saying, "Have you got a room? She's sick, she's sick." Eventually we found a room. I don't know who paid for it, or I just remember her just putting me in this room. And the next 48 hours were so horrific. It's the illest I hope I am, unless I'm actually dying. Horrifyingly sick. Managed to make it back up to London 2 days later. 6 weeks later, in a restaurant, ordered cooked oysters, and it all happened again. And apparently, once you've got that enzyme, you can never touch them. And so, you know
and
what?
your enzymes.
I mean, I've got so many annoying enzymes. So what's good about it is that I, as an island girl, I've had enough oysters. It's okay. And of all the things in life to not be able to eat, that's okay. Gluten's more annoying.
Gluten is annoying.
Yeah, gluten's a shame.
Well, because I read that, like, you know, when you cook, you like to cook large, which is like how I like to cook. So, you know, pulled pork and that kind of slow cooked meats and sort of and buns. Do you just, because one of my favourite things and one of my family's favourite things is, you know, to do a whole shoulder of pork.
Delicious.
Shred it all up and just serve it in buns with coleslaw and barbecue sauce and that kind of thing. Do you have to go gluten-free buns?
So I do that dish a lot when we'd have lots of people over on Sundays. And I used to buy all the gluten-free bread, which is, there are some really nice ones, but generally it's disappointing. So I will enjoy the plate of food if I just lose the bread. And I have the big pile of potato salad, loads of coleslaw, and I eat it more like a salad. And that doesn't bother me anymore, because now I just literally look at gluten and imagine the pain, and I just don't want it. That took a while. You know, I eat so much delicious food, and because I'm such a foodie and I cook meals every day. I'm like, everything that we eat in our house, I've cooked. I don't really feel like I'm missing out.
Is there a cookbook in you?
I was actually thinking about one the other day. I'm not very scientific. I feel like I'm a bit of chuck it over my shoulder and, you know.
But that's the right way to cook.
I think so.
Because I think cooking is one thing, baking is another.
I can't bake. Everything I bake is fizzy. There's a joke in my house. It's just fizzy. It's disgusting. There's a joke in my house as when one of the kids' birthdays is coming up, I'll be like, "Mummy will make you a lovely cake," and they're like, "Get away from me." So my art's 9th birthday, he just did it in a pizza restaurant, not yours, I'm sorry. I just made him a bucket of eaten mess and stuck the candles in that, and he thought that was absolutely amazing. So I just slopped out on big spoons, and then it made me feel like I'd actually created a gorgeous dessert, but I can't bake.
But you don't like puddings.
I don't like sugar. I mean, I like it. I don't like what it does to me. I never really have. My uncle used to run a gift shop in Guernsey, and during the holidays, he had this gorgeous kind of, you know, he used to sell Godiva chocolates and all these really fancy chocolates.
I don't like Posh chocolate.
Well, there you go. But my job was to sit in the basement of the shop and pack the gift boxes. And you can imagine, as a young teenage girl, how much chocolate I ate. And I think it just put me off. So even though I appreciate the taste of sweet things, I never order pudding. I make pudding for other people when they come over to my house, but generally I don't let anybody bring food into my house because I have to make it all, but I let people bring sweet things.
Yeah, it's a control issue.
I just love cooking so much. And here's the thing, it is a control issue. My kitchen it's not organised, it's absolute chaos. But when I say come to my house for food, I have covered from the second you walk in the door until the second you leave. And if you bring food, I don't know when we're going to eat that food because I've already got plenty. But if I have said, can someone bring a pudding, then that's what we do. But I love to cook for people. I love ingredients. I love the food shopping and going to the shop. I love every little part of it. And so, but puddings is because I just need someone else to do that.
Are you like me? So, which my wife Susan can't get her head around. She has to plan going to the supermarket, whereas if I'm cooking, I don't know what I'm going to cook until I go to the shops.
Because of the kids, I do a little bit of both. So I do kind of plan. My eldest is a vegetarian. My youngest is a real meat and potatoes kind of guy. And Chris doesn't eat fish, and I love fish. So we're all quite different. No, he doesn't really eat fish. He does eat a bit more now, but he didn't get brought up with fish. And And so I do have to think about what everyone's doing. So when I go to the shop, I am thinking about, the meals. But then like last night, I just randomly kind of whipped up a lentil curry that my eldest and I had and really enjoyed. And I wasn't...
Because you will lean towards vegan.
I love vegan food, but I'm not vegan. I eat everything apart from gluten and oysters. But I really am becoming more and more and more aware of what animal agriculture is doing to this planet. And I don't get preachy about it. It's something that I've chosen to research. I know this stuff and I really think about it. So I really do. When I'm at home, I make my own nut milk. I eat a lot of vegan food when I'm at home. My youngest, who's really fussy, I've now got him into tofu, which I make crispy and delicious. And I just think, I think about raising this generation of kids, they have to have the conscience that we weren't raised with. So I talk about it a lot at home, but I also...
I think there's a cookbook in there.
Well, maybe
I'm
there
just
is,
saying.
but I love to be...
What do you think?
My publicist. What do you think, Liz?
What do you think?
I tell you what I do love doing, what I always do for my kids, which they really, really roll their eyes about, but it makes me work harder to do it well. I make healthy versions of really indulgent dishes. So I make a healthy version of a mac and cheese. I make them healthy Snickers bars. I make this amazing chocolate mousse, but it's made with avocados. I always go for everything on my table will be cooked with good oils, everything's locally sourced. I'm a real meat snob. I think if you're going to eat meat, you have to
eat it less and eat it better.
And eat it better, exactly. Yeah. So I'm big on all of that. But I do kind of...
I don't know. I think that the Oporta way, cooking the Oporta way.
I should do an O potatoes.
Yeah, O potatoes. Here we go. All right, it's time for your second spoon. Are you ready?
I am so ready.
Don the blindfold,
I love
please.
this. This is my perfect experience. I'm so happy.
Right, here we go. Second spoon.
Oh, you're feeding.
I know, I'm feeding. Open wide. It's quite a big mouthful, this one.
Yeah.
A little bit wider. There we go. What have you got there?
Creme brulee?
No.
Is it some kind of creamy, alcohol-y pudding?
Yes, you're close.
Like a chocolate mousse?
Bang on.
Yeah, with some booze in it.
Yeah.
Oh, what booze is it? It's lovely.
Just a little light spirit in there for you.
Love it.
But you see, we did that for you because I think, although you say I don't like pudding, I think for people who don't like pudding, just a little bit, I think it's an important end note
it is nice.
To a meal.
But see, what I just had there is probably what I would eat. So if Chris orders, he loves pudding. So if he orders it, I might have a little spoonful and that's plenty. I used to live with my best friend Louise, and if she would buy these, or I don't know why, we would always just have these huge bars of chocolate in the house. Yeah. That would, like a big Toblerone that you get at the airport, would last me 3 years.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Like she would just...
You've got an enormous amount of self-control.
I just don't have a sweet tooth.
Johnny, my producer, thinks it's hilarious to buy... He likes to buy me the kilo bars of dairy milk because that is my Achilles heel.
Yeah.
Because I can sit and eat that in one sitting.
Well, see, those Kettle chips that are coming home with me will be gone by 4 p.m. Like, I can't have crisps in the house that don't get eaten quickly. That's what I love. But sweet stuff just doesn't do it for me. I don't like what it does to my teeth.
This book is great.
Thank you.
And people should go and buy it. And like you say, they don't need to have read the other ones to read this one.
They don't.
But it kind of, having read this one, I kind of want to go and see what the first two were like. But it is a great book, and I wish you every success with it. And I do think there's a cookbook in you. And, you know, in the same way that there's a book in everyone, I think there's a cookbook in you, because that passion for food and that kind of, it's nice to be able to share that with people. And yes, it's nice to be able to share it with friends, but, you know, share a little bit of the knowledge wider.
It's definitely not off the cards one day.
Good. That's what we like to hear. But that is all for this week. Huge thank you to my guest, Dawn Porter, whose new book, Honeybee, is out now and available in all good bookstores and online retailers. We will, of course, be here again next week with another fantastic guest. Thanks as ever to the team here at Mountain Street Restaurant and Jamie Shears. This podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts from, and of course on YouTube should you wish to watch what we're doing. But until next week, stay beautiful.